Parks update and Wellington Coast County Park.
We'll probably just focus on Wellington Hills. I think Hal was up. Hal and Jake Depp were up and did one presentation. Hal did an update on the fair,
Right.
I believe. So unless there's specific questions on the fair or something else, we'll go through this. I think you are, yeah, actually, and also thanks for the inquiry on the Mayor's Cup race. Yes, council and executive are invited every year to participate in that activity. So any council members that want to, we can find your way into a race car and participate in the Mayor's Cup race. I think it would be very fun. The Speedway is excited about that. You want to do the demo derby instead? Okay, we could probably figure that out.
Maybe not.
Careful what you ask for.
I mean, if that's what the Mayor's Cup kind of is, evidently. So with Wellington Hills, you all received this via email last week. This is a bigger version of the latest copy of what's coming out.
That's what I got to.
So let's run along with this for you. 240th or so, you are down the hill by Costco.
Yes.
That's where Councilman Miller is. 240th coming the way up. And you have this on 11 by 17. You should all have this. It's been put together, but wanted to show you in a little bit bigger scale. One of the last innovations or changes we've made, I think this is Plan 7 or 8, was due to the acquisition of the Burrow property. Mr. Burrow was willing to sell, and so one of our concerns that we still had was whether or not we were going to do any of the lighting of ball fields in more of the central portion of the park. There are folks to the south, they're King County residents, but to the south that were very concerned about that particular issue. And we know it's going to be stepped down and different elements, but so by buying the Burrow property up here, which is really this rectangle right through here, that allowed us to rotate those fields. And it also allowed us to put 4 full-size up here. So those fields now, the synthetic turf is all set down in that setback where it goes down 20 feet and it's cut in. So
Like
Jeffrey's working on that to put it up. That's perfect.
It's old-fashioned PowerPoint.
That's great.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
The key there was is we wanted to increase buffers as much as we possibly could. We also wanted to limit lighting through the center of the park. We know that we have some parking lot lighting that will be in there, but the parking lot lighting is very low. You're talking 18 to 20 foot poles, and that will also be cycled off 100% after the park closed. We find that even allowing a little bit of light sometimes leads to more illicit activity after hours. So just total darkness works good for us. And that's been something the neighbors were concerned about, was as things shut down, to not have any lighting in there. So we're basically putting all the synthetic turf fields in a large rectangle. Yeah, that's great.
So this mic going to be live. All you need to do is stand behind the podium.
Perfect.
Walk right in there.
It's the same thing as Serbia's had in the last.
So, again, what we by purchasing the Burroughs property, which is up, we were able to consolidate. So now there was going to be this large synthetic turf field down in the middle of the complex. Now that's all been moved, and by going with the 4 full-size fields up here, that accommodates quite a bit of play. And that was one of the original things we talked about, was having 4 synthetic turf lip fields, and we'd like to have the additional grass fields too for general play. And so at this point, the active use is happening in that one major area as far as the ball fields. Then you've got these grass fields, and again, this all steps down. We've been able to increase the buffer to a minimum of 120 feet all the way around the park. The closest home, the closest actual shop from any active element or what we consider to be more active, like ball field or building or those kind of things, is about 145 feet away, most being well over 200, 300, 400 feet away. So at this time, we're feeling like we've kind of taken that last big concern and moved that over. So there'll be no lighting through the center of the park. And then we've gotten some general information from the City of Woodinville. We've been meeting with City of Woodinville staff. We'll continue to do so. We met with them last Thursday. We've met with other folks. City manager was invited to be on the ad hoc committee, but he's not been able to attend too many, although they receive all the meeting minutes. And City is passing a resolution. They've put that together. You've seen a draft copy of that, which really talks about 95% of it is all the stuff we have to do every time anyways, the full SEPA checklist and all the environmental review and all those things that happen, and that's all well underway. The only thing that in the City of Woodinville's motion that they talked to is moving all the ball fields to the north of 240th. And that's simply just that's not where we're going on the plan. We believe that siting those to the south, it gave us more flexibility and better mitigation of the site to cut those into the hillside versus being placed out here. This community open space area now doesn't have any delineation or lining for full-size soccer fields. And talking to the soccer groups and then working with North Shore and the lacrosse groups and baseball and football and all those folks, the synthetic turf are a big deal to them. The lighted synthetic turf are a big deal because of capacity and getting those on. But we agreed that between the North Creek fields at Bothell and the 2 Woodinville fields, the center of the city, and Popkini, and then the 3 high schools, it gives us like 13 synthetic turf lit soccer fields within close proximity, within 5 miles. And so we kind of felt like, okay, if we just do those and we provide these 3 grass, then that's really great field space. That we're kind of doing our part on providing that kind of space and that active use space. And this stays really much more for just community open space. It still will be flattened out a bit here. This is 8 feet higher than that. The rest just stays kind of natural, but it'll be open grass play area. So we did originally have that programmed in for 2 soccer fields when we talked about having 3 synthetic turf up here and 1 synthetic turf in the middle. But again, by buying the Burroughs property, that really freed up some design elements. So, like Heidi's here today, so there actually is nothing within like 270 feet of her property line across the road. But it does go from 158 feet to 120 here, again to be planted, 120 on the top side, 120 down below. Although as you get closer into the houses down here, and most of these homes, I mean, folks will talk about this being rural or zoned R1. The vast majority of the lots are not 1 acre. The vast majority of the lots are somewhere between about 0.47 and 0.7 of an acre. So like these here, I don't think there's any that are 1 acre down here. There's a slated potential development here and one on the corner. But what we're finding is that the buffer down here is grown to well over 200, 250 feet, 300 feet between the active elements. So at this point we're feeling pretty good. We've run this by a number of people. The biggest issue we're being faced with right now is a lot of community interest in the park as being open as quickly as possible. We've got folks, Woodinville High School, other high schools that want to use the site for cross country. We have folks calling pretty much daily now that want to go out and take a walk on the site or go out and run their dog. And at this point, we still have the golf operations under contract. So, and their insurance company won't allow. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic. A number of folks have used this term pay to play, and they're feeling like for parks we're going to create this pay to play space. And it's very interesting that this site for 80 years has been pay to play. You don't go on this site unless you're going to go golf, typically. I mean, golf operations don't want people just off walking around or running their dog or doing a trail run, or you don't get to do that currently. We talked to the golf operations, and they don't want us allowing the public out on it until October 1st. So September 30th, golf operations will cease. It's the agreement we have with them. So that first week of October, we'll be starting out with some temporary fencing, temporary gate, doing a little bit of graveling in the parking lot to open that back up. So we have total cross-country teams and neighborhood folks and folks that want to come out and use it like a park, that will be open at that point to do so. So there'll be a small parking area set up for that. And we are having another ad hoc committee meeting. We've scheduled another meeting this Friday to go through this final piece with them. And we still have 1 or 2 little nuanced things we're looking at, which is potentially moving this playground up more towards right in there, a little closer to those fields. And then on the 15th, a week from Wednesday, we'll be doing another full community meeting at the Brightwater Learning Center, Environmental Learning Center again. So we'll be bringing this out and inviting anybody and everybody that wants to come out on the 15th.
15th,
Yeah, August 15th. That's 7 to 9. The ad hoc committee is 10 to noon. Certainly council staff typically come and are on the committee, but any council members are welcome. You know, public can come too. We've had folks just show up, but that'll be going on. And then August, at some point in August, we're doing a small meeting with some of the park advisory boards to talk about the comp plan update that's going on. And so they've asked for a short briefing on this, but they're looking at taking this up in September or October officially, because we want to complete the SEPA checklist, complete all the environmental review, have that ready, have our final design, and we'll bring that in with the master plan and do all that at once. So it comes to the park advisory board and then ultimately comes here after that. So hopefully that happens in October, late September, October, but Jeffrey's already made us aware of the meeting dates that are available, you know, through the end of October. So if we miss a window by a week, it may be that we don't have the full master plan and everything here to submit to you until even into November, depending upon what date we hit. I think there's 1 or 2 operations committee meetings, or whether we work with the operations chair and bring it to an administrative session or something outside of operations. So any questions?
Status of the transportation system.
Yeah, that's ongoing. We actually have met with a number of folks and met with Gibson Traffic last week, and again met with City of Woodinville staff and others. And you know, the anecdotally or the preliminarily, I know several members of the public have asked that they'd like to have preliminary studies released, and we typically don't do that. We don't release a preliminary budget. We don't release preliminary data. We typically finish the data and then present the full package, and that's what we're doing. But I have talked to Mr. Jensen specifically and others that were very concerned about 240th, 75th, and also what's going on down the hill. You know, at the end of the day, we do know we're improving all the way from the bottom of the hill up through the park. We're still working with the neighbors here, the 71st, and most of these folks are represented with that group. On what kind of improvements are made on 71st. We have a lot of interest in the neighbors in not improving that heavily. They do not want parking down that road. But part of your permit condition is if you have road frontage, you typically have to improve it. You have to put in a sidewalk or curb and gutter or widen it. And so we'll be working with Public Works and the county engineer on whether or not that has to occur there. The neighbors have been vehemently opposed to having parking on 71st, and we support that. We don't want parking there. We'll have the no park access signs posted on here. As golf operations end September 30th, those signs will be up because people will start seeing that it is a public access park. So we want the signs up. At this point, there wouldn't be any improvement made until construction, you know, through the permitting and bidding and all that stuff. But at least a few of the neighbors have said they'd just as soon have us fence within a few feet of the current roadway, simply to make it, you know, unlikely for anyone to park in that road, and we would support that. So it's just something we need to work through in the permitting process, design and engineering process. The other element of that that's positive from many people's standpoints is that there would have been a set amount of funding set aside for doing those improvements. We'd rather spend those improvements doing additional enhancements up to 40th or even down 75th. As long as it's contiguous part of the project, we can do that. So that's what we're working on with Public Works right now, and with the traffic engineer, and with the City of Woodinville. Is typically our study would actually really take this road into account, and potentially the far end. Certainly it's taken into the Woodinville, Snohomish Road, and 9. But we are extending that study a little further, and that's what's taking a little extra time. We are going down to 156th and 195th, or the road that comes up. It's in Woodinville. Same thing down here, where you've got the Woodinville, Snohomish Road. We're doing a little more design or engineering study on those intersections too. So that's why it's taken a little longer. Some of that wasn't in the original scope. The scope was really Snohomish County going north.
Do we have an updated timeline estimate? We're hoping to have it possibly at the end of the month.
Yeah, it's all part of the it's all part of our checklist. So we'll be presenting it all as a complete project as part of the checklist, and that hopefully would be, I mean, if I was going to try to get that to the Parks Advisory Board in September, and they meet September 11th. There's no meeting in August for the Parks Advisory Board other than there's a comp plan discussion they want to have. So it's probably close to that date when all that material would be available. You know, but then the SEPA has its own set of review, and it triggers opportunities for folks have to see that. And they have a comment window and then an appeal window, and all those different pieces kick in. So.
Yeah. You're talking about getting the 3D model. Is that?
We had hoped to. We are doing it, but we have to do an additional contract piece to do that because it wasn't included in anything that was written into the contract. So that's the ECAF's going out, I think today, or going up today. But we'll have that for the September meetings. We don't believe we can have it generated for next week, for the 15th. We also wanted to make sure, and this is another check-in, we knew we were coming up here today. So if a council member or someone saw something that they were very, very concerned with, I don't want to 3D model it only to pull it out. So the other thing, I mean, we've made you all aware of this, and the public's pretty aware of this, is that there's not enough funding to do all of the park build out right now. So we know there's going to be a phased approach to. We know that the two buildings we've talked about, and they've been a bit of a lightning rod, the two buildings. It's very interesting. A number of folks, and I got called from a couple of folks in Woodinville recently after a community meeting, and they're very concerned that we're building Costco on the hill. And I said, you know, it's hard to compare those two because I've spoken with Costco and spent time down there and looked at their site and went through all of what they did. And you're talking 150,000 plus square feet of building at that site, and a 14-acre site with 780 cars. So 100% of their site is developed. It's a 14.5-acre site with 150,000 plus square foot building and 780 vehicle parking stalls. What we have is a 103-acre site. Now we are talking about 700 cars on, and potentially up to about 115,000 square feet. You know, 50 over here and 60 over here. If that's what actually ultimately can happen, we're accounting for that in water runoff and utilities and those things and impervious surface, but there's no building or design plans done for these buildings. So we're working. You know, we worked through our RFP. People responded. We're working with those folks, but we know that's going to be a phased approach. But it's really important to note that down the hill here, that's 14.5 acres and 100% developed. This is 103 acres with about 25% of the space developed into synthetic turf and parking and playgrounds and, you know, picnic shelters and all that kind of stuff. So, other quick question?
Don't see any at this time.
Okay, so at this point, if you're comfortable with this, this is what I would like to have modeled into 3D because it's going to be very telling how these lay out. You know, the drop, this, you know, 18 to 20 foot drop from up there down to here, down another 14 to here, 8 feet here, down to there, would be an 8 foot drop. The parking lot step down. I think that's going to be very important to see for line of sight and knowing what the site will look like.
Having been out to the site and seeing how it does roll and the elevation changes, I think that would be very helpful for everybody.
And again, one of the things that neighbors really wanted us to do was save as many of the fairway trees, and we are still up at about, out of the 90 or so that we had surveyed and identified, we're about 78 that are being capped. There's like 3 or 4 over here and a small stand over here. Now it's this was very important to save those when this was going to be a synthetic turf field, because folks from the south on the Woodinville side would have been viewing into that, and they felt very strongly about having the lights be shielded by this tree stand which runs up that fairway. Now there won't be any lights, but we still have been able to retain all the trees. So it's nice from the standpoint of aesthetics and view forward.
Has Woodinville given any rationale behind moving Western Waller Fields to the north now, except it gets it farther away from the middle? Is that?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty much.
Yeah.
It was just, I haven't seen anything in writing that does that.
Yeah, I mean, typically what we see in most park developments, and this is the same kind as people want to know, you know, traffic and lighting and are you handling the, you know, water runoff, those kind of things. So one of the things Woodinville was concerned about was a Little Bear Creek, just like we're very concerned about it, and how all this water ends up down there.
Right now, we firmly believe that we're going to enhance water quality significantly on the site, simply because of retention galleries and then opening up the pond and daylighting that pipe, where the retention goes through, or detention goes through and drops right into Vintage Creek and then just comes out with a massive outflow. Kind of like Lunge Gulch or Japanese Gulch or one of those that gets a lot of development. So we know that by slowing all that down and doing the retention under those fields and doing the retention here and then doing, it's basically all low impact development too. It's pretty much LID. So we're going to enhance the water quality down through Vintage Creek, which is identified here and named, and there's 2 other creeks, one here, well, a couple small ones there that are unnamed creeks. But we believe that will enhance water quality down there.
The citizen comment, there was a reference to a letter from an attorney. I don't know. I would assume that goes to the PA's office of responsibility.
Yeah, actually, there was a July 6th letter, but it didn't actually request a response. It was simply stating that they were concerned about this action moving quickly and coming up on July 10th. The master plan to be prepared on July 10th and presented. So that was not the case. We chose not to do that, and we actually agreed with a couple of comments made by the attorney that it's simply better to do the full, complete checklist prior to the master plan. And so it's somewhat atypical, because a lot of times we'll either do a non-project SEPA or we do a master plan. Historically, we've done a master plan, so this is what we want to build, and then you do the complete SEPA checklist. On this one, the attorney argued, and other folks have been concerned, and neighbors have been concerned about, we want to see the complete checklist, which identifies all these things before the master plan even is adopted by the council. So that's the tack we're taking. It's kind of a new direction for parks to do all of the study, all the design, all the engineering, to review the whole SEPA checklist prior to submitting it even to the park board as the final master plan. But we believe in this case that's prudent. That's basically what the attorney was looking for. It's certainly what the city of Woodinville is also looking for. Their concerns are mostly environmental and traffic based. So all of them want to see complete studies, all of it done. That would be presented.
I think we'd all be well served to get some sort of response back.
Okay.
Those questions, even if it's we agreed did this or we
Okay.
disagree, just some sort of response.
There's a public disclosure request that should have come up to your offices recently. It's a separate one. An attorney has been secured. So I think that's available, and those are being made available. Most everything is available online. Iterations of plans is really all about first emails. That's what they're looking for, so I'll get that out quickly. All right, thanks for the opportunity.
Saying nothing else to add under the parks update, we'll move to the